Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Data for Food 2030 podcast. In today's episode, I'm very happy to welcome Isabelle Piot-Lepetit from INRAE to talk about the definition of the data economy for food systems. Isabelle, welcome and thank you very much for accepting the invitation and joining our podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
So to start, as I mentioned, you are leading the research on shaping the definition of the data economy for food systems. Can you talk a little bit more about your role and what does this research aim to achieve?
Okay, the project aims to explain and define the data economy for food systems. The thing is that there is gap in knowledge, and the objective of the work package was really to provide further knowledge, further understanding, and also to try to identify concepts that will suit and will allow us to, provide the definition.
That's great. And for those who may not be so familiar, how would you describe the data economy for food system in simple terms, like for everyone to understand?
Okay, so we work a lot to find out what the data economy for food system is, and the answer is an ecosystem with a lot of subsystems, and each subsystem will be defined by time, space, people, activities, the environment they are in, the legislations, and also their culture, tradition, and so on. And when we put all those subsystems together, then we have the data economy for food system.
That's great. So it's like a dynamic ecosystem that constantly evolves, changes.
Yeah.
It's it's an iterative process.
Yes, it's a very dynamic one because some ecosystems can disappear, or they can merge with other subsystems, or you can have new ones coming out. So yes, the dynamics is there.
Thank you very much. And why was it so important for the project to actually define what data economy for food system means?
Well, in the data economy for food systems, you have economy. So at first, researchers try to explain it, even policymakers, through the economic theory. But it comes out that it's not covering well what the data economy is. So it was now very important that it's developing further and further to get a clear understanding on what it is, what it is not, and what is still unknown.
To have like a common ground for everyone, so that everyone can actually understand the same thing when we're talking about the data economy for food systems.
Yeah, it's the objective, yes. It's to have a common vocabulary, a common description, understanding, and then it will help people to design their business, their activity, legislation, and so on common ground.
Very nice. And now can you walk us through the process you followed to come up with this definition? I mean, how did you go about building this definition and collecting all the necessary insights?
Yeah, well, it was a long process because we engaged ourselves to be empirically driven. So at first we had literature review, then we shared the process, the outcomes with the participants of the project. Then based on their comments, we went back to the literature, and then we shared what we found with the case studies of the project, with our real life experience and activities. And based on their own understanding, then we went back to what exists in the literature to find out ways to cover the gaps.
That's great. And what kinds of data and what kinds of actors are part of the data economy? Is the concept that includes everyone along the food chain?
Well, all the actors are there, especially those from the food chains, and but not only them. There is also legal people, people working for the environment, protecting the environment. There is also all kinds of direct and indirect interventions. And what we found is that the concept of food chains is not so relevant right now. It would be better to speak about food networks.
So it covers a very broad spectrum of data and stakeholders, as I understand from what you're saying.
Yes, a lot.
Direct and indirect at the same time.
Yeah, the thing is that the data economy has created direct interaction between stakeholders, so from the production up to the consumer, but also indirect new or transform interaction for finances, legal support, and so on.
And you engaged with all of them, like in workshops, in within the project, in the case studies.
Yeah.
It was a back and forth process to finally.
Yeah, after checking our findings with people within the project, then we use the events where the project were. And we discuss with stakeholders, participants of those events, so we receive additional feedbacks.
That's great. So the result is a product of a lot of effort and a lot of studies, both literature review and conversations, interviews, workshops.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Thank you very, very much. And now can you tell us what are the main interesting findings that have come up from your research so far?
Well, one of the main findings was the importance of immaterial things, because the data is not something that exists per se. The existence needs to be shown, so through databases, data spaces, analysis of data. So the thing is, we are speaking about something with no materiality. So it was a great challenge, and the second one, it was not something that is easy to get money from. So the conventional background of the economic theory was not the best way to explore it. And based on the discussion we had with all the participants and stakeholders we met, one common point was the notion of service. And we work a lot on what it means. And it was the thing of the framework and the definition. The data and all the things around can be looked at as a service.
Thank you very much. And let me ask another question. How does defining this concept contribute to making Europe's agri-food systems more transparent, sustainable and resilient?
Well, the definition and the framework is a very holistic view of what's going on in the data economy for food systems. And the thing is, it can help more transparency, sustainability, especially from the policymaker point of view, because it will provide a way when you are looking at a specific issue within this ecosystem, then you will also be allowed to access all the related direct and indirect impact a legal decision can have. So it's a way to not just look at one piece of things, but to have a broad view of what the impact it can have elsewhere.
Of course. And along the way, were there any challenges that you had during the process of making something so vague and difficult to understand, like clear and understandable for everyone?
The main challenge is a shift of mind, because when people are used to work with supply chains, monetary transactions, and you come in with no, we are co-creating value, we are working in networks. It's not the way they were taught to think. So they need to stop, think a bit more, and then to try to understand things. And sometimes they were not convinced at all, but we discussed. And after testing the framework and the definition on the case study, it appeared that it's relevant.
And the shift of mind is a very difficult thing to achieve, because as you mentioned, people may not be so open to new things, to new concepts, to new processes. So it's a very, very difficult thing to start changing.
Yes, yeah, but we're all humans, so we come back to what we are comfortable with.
Exactly.
And so putting forward new concept, new way of thinking is challenging, but within the project, people were very open and eager to learn more and receptive, so we had great conversations.
That's very positive. And how can all this work that you're currently working on help all the involved stakeholders, from policymakers, businesses, to researchers, all of these, make better use of data in the food sector, and how can they benefit from this?
So we are at the third year of the project, so right now all the work done was mainly for academics and policymakers. So, but in the last year of the project, the objective is to adjust or provide more precise definition of the data economy for food system based on different type of actors, their degree of involvement in the data economy, where they are located in food chains, so it can become more concrete and more understandable for a larger audience.
And accessible for everyone.
Yeah, it's the objective. Yeah, absolutely.
Great. And finally, one last question for today before we finish our discussion. If you could summarize in one thought, what would a successful data economy for food systems would look like to you?
Yeah, it's a hard question. For me, it will be a space, an ecosystem where human actors will find out value based on what is produced and shared and accessible to them, and that this value will help them grow, develop, and allow them to be able to co-create with others new value, and others being human or non-human entities.
Of course.
And the value will be for themselves first, but also for the overall data economy for food systems.
Great, and let's close with that. Thank you very, very much for participating and sharing all this interesting information with us today. And as for you, dear viewers and listeners, thank you very much for watching this episode. See you in the next episode.